Hey, there it is. Helps when you don't hit that. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Accidentally must have bumped my microphone. Shut it off. So yes, now we're back, and all right. So yes, so Bitcoin, yeah, crossing $100,000. Now we dipped down below it a little bit. Tesla having a great run today, pushing up to 375, closing at 369.49. Um, so uh, so yeah, having a nice little run here. And I know we don't talk about it a lot, but let me know you guys do cryptocurrency. I know, like I said, we usually do Tesla stocks and things like that. Um, but cryptocurrency is a small piece of my portfolio. I have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, and Sheeb. And quite honestly, when you start looking at some of the data and how cryptocurrency moves, and just kind of like it runs up, flattens out, runs up, flattens out, and we usually go in the cycles where it'll thanks, Dad. The on-off switches can get complicated. Yes, yes, they can. Well, this one here is just a tap, so if I accidentally bump it the wrong way, it shuts itself off. But cryptocurrency, it'll run in cycles. So it'll run up like we saw last time to around that $70,000 mark, and then it pulled down to 15,000. So going by numbers, this time around, people are guesstimating we're going to run to maybe like 150 to 200,000. I'm guessing maybe 125 to 150. And then I think we're going to pull back down to that $50 to $60,000 range when it comes to Bitcoin. And again, that's just a rough ballpark of an area as to where it may fall to. So for me right now, I'm not buying anymore. I'm following cryptocurrency is part of my whole spreadsheet, and I'm just following however it tells me. So if I happen to add more and there's a little dip in crypto, I'll add to it, but I'm not looking to add heavier. And chances are, when we get the next pullback, and I do think we will, judging by the timing of the Bitcoin halving, the next one's going to be in May of 2028, roughly. So if all the patterns stay the same as we've had before, then we'll probably end up seeing a pullback in cryptocurrency in the next year and a half, maybe like 2026. So yes, this run that we're on could continue. Now we may get some corrections here and there along the way, might get some sideways trading along the way with it. So chances are we may get some of that, but I don't think we get the massive pullback like we saw from 70 to 15,000. I don't think we get that until 2026. If we get a recession before then, maybe things change, but that's my guesstimate right now based upon the information we have. So with that being said, I'm just adding as my portfolio says, and I'll just wait for that big pullback. And I do trim a little bit as we go higher. So like if it's really overblown, like Doge, I've sold a little bit off of, just to kind of trim a little bit and put it in other places into my portfolio. If that happens, I'll do the same. But I still think we have a Doge push to go. We might get to $1 for Doge, and Sheeb, I think we're going to get much higher than we're at right now. There's a lot of other altcoins and things like that. Typically what happens is Bitcoin and the larger coins will run push as they are. Then they do a little bit of a correction, and then you get the altcoins will push up after that. So that's kind of the next phase we're going to be getting into. Timing of it, I have no idea, but historically, that's what we've gone through when it comes to cryptocurrency for you guys who are involved in that. But now when it comes to Tesla pushing up to 375 today. Just I don't know how much more of this is sentiment. Honestly, I do still think that a lot of this is a sentiment push. Some people can argue that, it's just catching up to the valuation and what the future holds, but how much of the future are we going to bake into it? Because, at all-time highs when we hit it before, we had, 10 years of future baked into the stock price itself, and a lot of that involved FSD, robo-taxis, and all of that. So not to say we're not ever going to get that. If it comes to fruition, I think that will justify it. We just happen to have a lot of that, pulled forward in the stock price. We're kind of doing that again right now as we're pulling a lot of that forward in the stock price. This time around, we're obviously a lot closer, most likely, to having robo-taxis, to having FSD solved. And we're also a lot closer, and this is the more important one for me and most larger investors when it comes to institutions and things like that, is next year's compact car, or I think, as Gary Black is putting it, it's probably like a hatchback version of the Model 3. If that's what we're going to be getting in Q1 or Q2 of next year, that is going to be moving the needle significantly more. That could potentially justify the stock move that we have right now. So when you're looking out 6 to 12 months, if Tesla is going to be producing this in Q1 or Q2 of next year, and they're able to ramp it up significantly quicker than they have with all their other ones because of the new production format that they're using, that could justify the stock price right now. So again, I have finished selling off any shares I was going to sell. I finished selling those off about a year ago. Now I'm back at the point where I'm going to be adding more of the individual shares. I have it in a lot of my other areas, ETFs and things like that in my portfolio. But now getting back to adding actual individual shares to Tesla, I'm back at that. So as we get to the point where my portfolio tells me to do this, I will be adding more Tesla shares as we move forward. So I think Tesla is going to be amazing long term. Still have some things that they need to prove to everyone, but when you're looking at it from an institutional standpoint, that less expensive vehicle next year, the Model 3 hatchback, I think that is going to be the big game changer for Tesla in the near term. And then as we get further on down the road and people get familiar with that format when it comes to that being the actual cyber cab, then we can actually say, okay, well, now we're getting closer to FSD, and FSD 13 just got rolled out. Seems like it's pretty awesome from the people who have spoken about it. So again, getting closer, and it's just a matter of time to when we get there. And then we'll be in a really good place when Tesla gets to that point. Guess on next Tesla split. Judging by how Tesla has done their splits and the reasons they have done them, chances are we won't get there until Tesla's pushing up closer to $1,000 again. And so if that is the case, then we have to start looking at, when do we think Tesla's going to hit $1,000 again? I think a lot of it is going to come down to regulations, which some people think that now that, Trump has won and Elon is, buddy with Trump, that we may get regulations come out sooner. Yes and no. I think what's more important is the companies like Waymo, who are out there kind of setting the groundwork for these cyber cabs to come out, and they're setting the groundwork in these larger cities. That there is giving us a lot of data from that standpoint, from a specific cyber cab or robotaxi standpoint, for regulators to take a look at these numbers and the data and see what's going on. Then they could take Tesla's numbers and information and put it in there to actually regulate it on a national level versus on a state by state or in a geofenced area level. And I think that's what's really going to take the next step when it comes to an actual split, and where the stock price moves from there. Energy is obviously growing extremely well. Next year's compact car, if Tesla can come out with the Model 3 hatchback next year, and they can actually run that number of production out, like Elon said, and he wants to increase, maybe 30% year over year growth. If Tesla can hit that 30% year over year growth for 2025, we could be looking at pushing all-time highs by the end of next year, if not higher, as long as we don't get into a recession. So if we go without a recession next year, I think we could be definitely pushing that, maybe because of the exuberance behind Tesla itself, maybe pushing over $500 at that point, maybe higher. We could get back to the point where we could be reflecting what we saw back in 2020 and 2021, where maybe we start pushing into 2026 and we're hitting that $750 mark, and then we're just on the spiral up. But again, at that point, we still may be pulling forward a lot of the future revenues for the company and of future earnings, because we're still pushing way higher right now as it is. So a lot of the numbers right now that we're looking at are looking at probably 2025's production if we hit that 30%, and potentially getting raw FSD solved by the end of next year. We're kind of pricing all of that in right now. So if we get all of that next year, that's what today's price would look like. So now we have to start looking next year as, all right, if it's solved, then we start factoring in, well, what are robotaxi and cybercab numbers going to look like? What are we going to be looking at for energy? And so there's a lot. And, when you keep pushing that forward and you're looking out 12 months, you have to now you're now basically factoring in a flawless execution when it comes to the company. So cool, we're at the point where we're pricing all that in. If Tesla fails on that execution, we see a massive pullback. If Tesla does execute and actually, if Tesla executes, it will be where we're at. If Tesla exceeds that number, then we could push higher from there, and then we start to get an upward spiral again. So to go back and answer the question about when I think it's going to split, to your point, it's going to split around $1,000. I would say probably 2027, based upon how the stock trades itself, and if that is when robo taxis and cybercabs are going to hit the road, and that's when production is going to happen in 2027, then realistically, we can start getting numbers and data in at that point. So probably if that truly comes to fruition at that point, 2027 to 2028 would be that stock split in my guess. Bitcoin going up because Trump wants government to own it. If it doesn't happen, look out below. Actually, Dad, I found out the U.S. is the largest Bitcoin holder of any country in the world as of right now by a long shot. So they already do own a lot of Bitcoin. What Trump is stating now, obviously, is going to be increasing that to be even larger. So their plan is to be buying 200,000 Bitcoin every single year for the next 5 years, thereby putting a $1 million lot or a 1 million coin vault worth of Bitcoin aside for the US government, and they want to hold it for 20 years. So obviously that all needs to play out. But if that ends up playing out the way it is, right now there's 19.7 million Bitcoin out there. And, we still have another 120 years for the rest of it to get mined, basically. So there's not a lot left to go out because there's only 21 million Bitcoin total. So the majority of Bitcoin and the supply is out there as it is. So if the US government is going to own 1 million of them, that's 5%. So that's immediately going to just, shrink down the supply of Bitcoin even more. And obviously other countries are going to in turn do the same. So the supply of Bitcoin that is going to be available is going to shrink significantly, thereby causing it to be a strong store of value and in turn create the price to go up even more. Now, realistically, everything right now is still based upon, it's all speculation. So that's all cryptocurrency is all speculation right now. Obviously, the knowledge behind it and the future potential uses of it, could come to fruition and thereby make it an actual viable source, whether Bitcoin is going to be that store of value or other coins are actually going to be used as a monetary system. If that is going to be the case on a grand, broad scale, like dollar and current currency are, that's going to make a huge difference as well. But until we get to that point, everything is going to really truly be speculation about what's going to happen. Very similar to like Tesla and FSD and robo taxis. That's all speculation. We aren't there yet. It hasn't been solved yet, but people are, pricing that into the stock price itself. Very similar to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is people believe that we're truly going to get to that point. And I do think we will get there. And until we get to that point, though, it's all speculation as to whether we are or not. So it realistically, it is uncertain as to whether it's all going to happen. And, it's a Ponzi scheme in your book. If realistically, you can say that the dollar is also a Ponzi scheme because the dollar, any currency realistically is a Ponzi scheme because it's all based upon, supply and demand and whether people are using it or not. So especially when, currency, the US dollar was first created, it was all, hey, use the dollar. Well, why would I want the dollar? What's the value of the dollar? It's worthless to me. It means nothing. Over time, it became something as it is right now. Now it's basically the global currency. So realistically, every currency is a Ponzi scheme to start, and then it's all supported and backed by, products or whatever it is in a government. And if the government's going to be purchasing it, then Bitcoin could theoretically become that same standard similar to gold. And that's kind of what, it comes down to. And you walk into a store with, and it's true, and you can't do that with Bitcoin, but once cryptocurrency becomes just that, and you can actually go in and use it for something, once it becomes a viable currency to purchase things, and you can with some of them you can purchase it depending on very, niche areas and places online you can use it. For instance, you can use Dogecoin to buy stuff in the Tesla's shop. But until you get to the point where it's mass adopted and used everywhere, you're absolutely right. It's not going to have any true worth other than speculation. But that's what a lot of people are speculating is it will eventually get to that point where it will have um, that value and actually usage. Lost my cards a few weeks ago. I had to edit my PayPal for membership program. Oh no. Let me see. ACHR thoughts. Oh yeah, you know what? Oh, that wasn't on my list. I apologize. I have the list right next to me. Of all the ones that you guys had spoken about last time, and I will, as I promised, get into those. Just with the holidays, I didn't have a lot of time, but I do have that list right here next to me. So I'll take a look at all the ones that you guys had asked about last time. And I know I owe you guys. I meant to do it this week, and just coming off the holidays, just didn't have the time. But I'm going to be doing a gap video on SoFi and the Russell 2000. So this way, you guys can look at small caps and all the different gaps that we see in SoFi, which SoFi has been booming as well. Palantir has been booming as well. So both of those, and I did trim a little bit off of those. I put stops in for both of those in the last day, and I have 10 shares of Palantir, one of them sold, so I have 9 now. And then I had 50 shares of SoFi and 5 of those sold off. And I love them long term, but they're kind of getting to an exaggerated valuation right now, similar to, like I said, we saw back in 2021, where there was a lot of forward earnings pulled into it. So one of two things are going to happen right now with a lot of these pushes that are going on. It's either going to we're going to get a pullback and a correction on them to kind of get them, out of the clouds, or they're just going to trade sideways for a while until earnings actually catch up to where the value of the stock price is. And I have a feeling we'll get the correction rather than a sideways trading, but we also may get, some people have speculated that we may get, a dead decade, similar to how we had after the dot-com bubble. It was a lost decade of earning of the stock market where it traded sideways. There was really no gain. Now, trading sideways is great for, investors like my dad who do swing trading. You're going to have opportunities up and down all over the place. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great for options traders, ETFs like JEPQ and JEPI, and a lot of these covered call options strategies, QQQI, SPYI. They'll do phenomenal in sideways trading. Yield maxes may actually also do relatively well in a sideways trading environment like that also, because in that case, the equity itself isn't going to appreciate unless you're swing trading. But if you're just a long-term holder, it wouldn't appreciate. But if you're going to be getting options played off of all of that, you can collect a significant amount of premium and get a lot of that income coming in when it comes to the passive income and the dividends. Part of the reason why I'm doing that, where I'm going to get all this cash flow coming in from the dividends, all of that money I can then put into anything if it's trading sideways, and I can take advantage of any opportunities if it's swinging up and down. And I do think we're going to get a lot of that swing up and down over the next few years until we actually can confirm that unemployment is in a safe and good place. We can confirm that we've got inflation is actually squashed. We've got rates that are coming back down, and whether they get back, I don't think they're going to get to zero. That's not what the Fed's goal is get them to zero. But having the interest rates coming down to that 2.5% to 3% range, if we can get to that range, that would be good. We're still a bit above that, and I think that's what the goal is to get it down there. And then, of course, we still have, Trump still hasn't taken presidency. What is he going to do over the next 4 years? So there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. And because of the uncertainty, we're going to have this bullishness right now, but that could swing in the other direction as well. People are guessing, are we going to have a rough second half of December and not get a Santa Claus rally? Is this all going to kick off January 1st? Are we going to have this happen right after the inauguration on January 20th? So there's a lot of people predicting some bearishness coming in the market in Q1 and Q2 of next year. And last time we had a lot of people predicting that, we actually had a massive bull run. So again, nobody knows for sure what the heck is going to be going on in the market. All I can suggest is be prepared for anything. If you want to be all in, be all in. Do whatever's best for you and your own strategy. For me, I just keep myself sitting here with almost 11% cash. I keep on adding anything over 11% cash into my portfolio, as my portfolio dictates, and that's it. Let's see. Most people don't trust or believe in cryptocurrency. I think that's what you meant, cryptocurrency. Me too. So far as I'm dipping high yield. Yeah. Cryptocurrency is, and again, it comes down to a lot of trust and speculation. And people who understand it and they're really into it, they know what's going on. They can play it. That's cool. I'm not one of those. I do believe that the community has been growing, and it's because of the fact that government is buying it already. It's obviously going to be something of significance in the future. When it's going to be there, I don't know, and it's still highly volatile, and I think I could put my place in much safer places, and I'm much more conservative, so a very small percentage of my portfolio is cryptocurrency, and that's it. But yeah, we have a long way to go when it comes to that. Will we have another rate cut this month? Yeah, man, it sounds like it might not happen. Judging by what Jerome Powell said earlier this week, we might not see a rate cut this month. Looking at inflation, because of the fact that they've cut the rates now by 75 basis points, we might not see it because inflation's been kind of stagnant. It was coming down nicely and then it kind of stalled out. So, with that happening and the Fed seeming to think that the unemployment numbers are looking better, but are they really, or were those just inflated incorrectly? Truly don't know. That's going to come down to whether you believe the government or not. So, but based upon what Jerome Powell is saying, the unemployment numbers are looking good enough. And based upon where we're at with unemployment, it's still a good number. It was the rate of increase of unemployment that was the concern. And now it seems like that has also stalled out. And we don't want stagflation, but if the Fed cuts rates again 25 basis points, that could lead them to a point where unemployment may come down, but inflation might go up, and they don't want inflation to get out of control again. So they would be much more happy if they kept rates where they were to keep inflation coming down or at least stalled. And even if that means that unemployment may tick up a little bit, that wouldn't concern them. So there's a good chance we might not get a rate cut this month at all. Yeah, and as my dad can attest, this has been a great period for swing traders, and he has been doing very well. And I think this could last. I think we could have a significantly long period of swing trading opportunity. Now, of course, if we end up getting a recession next year, that still could be good for swing traders, but swing traders would have to be careful there because typically swing trading is better when everything's just going up because you really can't go wrong. Um, you go up if something you individually own sells off, great. There's always other opportunities for you to put money into. When you're going in the other direction and the stock market is selling off, like we saw in 2022, there's still always going to be opportunities out there, but they're fewer and it's not as easy to make money. And you typically may have to hold longer. My dad was still successful in 2022. He can attest to that, but yeah, it's not as easy as it has been over the last year and a half. Year and a half, you really like almost anything you picked was a winner in the last year and a half. There really wasn't much in the way of losers in the last year and a half. I mean, my entire portfolio is just hot green. It's amazing. Let's see what else we got going on. Palantir. I mean, actually, let me bring this up for you guys here. Just taking a look at some of the charts that we got going on. Mm, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, I mean, Palantir pushing up, and of course, mine sold off at $68 and it jumped back up. But I'm not concerned. One of the things that my dad has taught me when it comes to um, swing trading is never complain about making profits. And my buy-in um, on Palantir, my cost basis was $20, and I sold at 68. I'm not going to complain about more than a 3x on it. So cannot complain whatsoever on that. And I'm very happy. But again, looking at the gaps here, a giant gap down to 42. We've got a gap at 58, a gap at 51. And just going back to remembering what happened with Tesla, and not to say that history has to repeat itself, but 9 times out of 10, gaps fill. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 gaps, 5, 6, 7. I mean, 7 gaps here that go back to February of this year alone. So within the last year, there's 7 gaps. And again, not to say that it has to pull back to $18, but man, just knowing how awesome Tesla was and everything that Tesla had going for it, um, and it still pulled back to where it did. I cannot take anything off the table about any other company potentially pulling back, especially one with high speculation like Palantir, just like a Tesla. And again, not to say that this isn't justified and it's never going to hit this level when it comes to the actual fundamentals of the company, but it's a little stretched right now. And looking at Tesla here, all the gaps Tesla has that we talked about previously, again, these are giant gaps that go back to, just, you know, earnings in October, and there's, five good sized gaps. So I think a lot of this excitement for these companies is a great sign. And a lot of times it does give us indication as to what the future could hold for the company. I just think it's a lot of future pulled forward, and we need some time to cool off, and that's all. Looking at the RSI right now, pushing right at that 70 here, so that's getting close to that, overbought range. Just some things that I've got playing around in my head. That's all. So much uncertainty next month with new POTUS. Yeah, his crazy high tariffs and high isolationism and loose mouths. Wish he'd more cash on hand. Yeah, views economic policies. Yeah, Palantir is very, very bullish because of what they do. It's not a lot of people view Palantir as just a cybersecurity play, and it's a lot more than that. They're doing a lot of AI stuff, and what they do with AI is what a lot of actual like retailers and other companies are using for data points when it comes to how they can run their business and be more efficient. And they're saving companies significant amounts of money on their bottom line by helping them. And that's the commercial side of things that a lot of people don't understand right now. They're very well known for their contracts with the US government and other governments when it comes to the cybersecurity, but they have that commercialized stuff when it comes to AI that a lot of people don't know. And that to me is going to be their big bread and butter as they move forward. Very similar to like Tesla when it comes to energy, where eventually I think energy is going to be a larger portion of their business than even just EVs are going to be. It's going to be years down the road. Similar to Palantir, the commercial side of things is going to eclipse the cybersecurity side of things, but they made their start when it came to cybersecurity. And so eventually we'll get to that point when it comes to that with Palantir. And that's why everybody's so bullish on it. And the people who are deep into it, very much like the people who are, very knowledgeable about cryptocurrency, they understand this. Wall Street doesn't dive in like a lot of these people, individual retail investors do. So Wall Street is now starting to understand this, and because of that, institutions will buy in. Obviously, Palantir and the S&P 500 that has helped as well. That's going to push everything forward. And then, it's a lot of this just needs to come to fruition. But realistically, retail investors don't move the stock as much as institutions do. So when institutions start to buy in, then you get retail investors get super excited, and that pushes it higher than it should be. And then, it'll get cooled off and come back down. So, when you start talking about potential, hedge funds and manipulation as well, Palantir comes out and they actually start to back up and support what the stock price is and what all these retail investors have said. Then you have, these buddies for the hedge funds come in and say, "Ooh, I want to buy Palantir, but I don't want to buy it at these prices. I want to buy it lower." That's when you start getting some of these negative reports, and you get the negative sentiment reports that come out. We saw it with Tesla happen all the time. Negativity comes out, drives the stock price down. Then all of a sudden, all their buddies buy in, and it goes back up, because that's one of the things you have to pay attention to is when you're listening to the news, if you listen to the news, what of this is really truly something that's going to affect the fundamentals of the company versus what is just kind of some FUD that's out there? It's fear, uncertainty, and doubt getting spread, which can manipulate the stock price one way or another. And that's kind of what you have to look at there. And when it comes to Trump and his high tariffs, again, a lot of this now is also speculation whether he's actually going to. A lot of it sounds like it's talks that he's having with other countries, saying, "Hey, these are the way things are going to operate in the U.S. And if you're not going to abide by how we're going to operate going forward, then we're going to slap some tariffs on you." You know, Trump's point behind all of this is to bring manufacturing back to the US, which in turn would help bring up our GDP and help, US based companies do even better, create more jobs here, and, re-stimulate the US economy. That is the point behind him doing all of this. historically, tariffs tend to lead to inflation and higher prices because you put the tariffs on everything else. And then there was US based companies think, oh, well, if the tariffs are going to be there and the foreign based prices are going to be higher, then we can go up on our prices as well. We can still stay below the tariffs, but it's US made. We can go up on our prices, thereby pushing up prices also. And so that's historically what has happened. So we have to see how it's going to play out this time. But that's why another reason to be invested is because of all of this. Now, obviously, inflation, especially runaway inflation, horrible. You don't want that. You want inflation to be a nice little steady crawl forward to keep the economy moving forward. But by being invested, think about the fact that let's say we keep at that nice 3% inflation rate every year. That means that everything is going to go up 3%. That means that all of our companies will be making 3% more as long as their sales stay steady. They go up 3% every single year just based upon inflation itself. That's why you always hear about inflation adjusted numbers. So if you have just cash, you're going to be losing 3% on that cash every year. But if you have inflation but if you have that money invested and inflation is going up 3%, anything you're invested in, obviously, it depends on how the company is doing. But if you're basically, let's say the S&P 500, that's going to go up 3% plus what the actual market is going to be going up as well, thereby making you even more money. So that's why it's so important to be invested in, good companies, because if you have just cash, you're theoretically losing money to inflation. Rio Tinto in Washington is using Palantir assistance too. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of things that Palantir is working on that a lot of people don't know. And that's one of the reasons why they do so well and why retail investors are so big on it and pushing it up higher. Now, the problem I see with retail investors, which I've seen with Tesla stock itself, is they get extremely excited about the future, but they don't truly understand how the broader market works. So when you look at the broader market and you look at institutions looking 6 to 12 months ahead, and they want to know, all right, what are your revenues going to be in the next 6 to 12 months? That's what they're looking at. And retail investors, especially ones that are very excited about companies like this, don't understand that. And they see, hey, I'm a long-term investor in this company. I can see where it's going to go 10 years down the road. They think that the company is going to be bringing X, Y, and Z when it comes to revenues, but it may not be a realistic view of it. And it's not the view that, Wall Street has. And so then Wall Street kind of brings it back down to earth and says, that's not where we're at. We are big money. We actually see where we're going with this. We're looking 1 year out. We're now looking 5 to 10 years out. And again, that's why retail investors are so excited, pull forward a lot of that when it comes to the stock price. And I think that's where we're at when it comes to Palantir, when it comes to Tesla, when it comes to even SoFi. I think we've just pulled forward a lot of those earnings right now. So just waiting for that little bit of a cool off. And again, if it keeps on going up and my portfolio tells me to buy, I'll buy. I'm not going to shy away from it. But there's also reasons why Warren Buffett's got $325 billion in cash on the sidelines right now, because he anticipates. It's not even though he anticipates, because he's himself has said that he doesn't look at the macro environment really. He doesn't pay attention to macroeconomics. But for him, there's he's looking for great companies at good deals, and he sees very few because everything in the stock market is extremely expensive right now. And that doesn't even, and that's just the regular broad market. When you start looking at things like Tesla, Palantir, and SoFi, those are extremely expensive, from a Warren Buffett standpoint. So, and looking at Tesla in particular, looking at the PE ratio on it, I mean, PE ratio forecast 149. When you're pushing triple digits on your PE ratio, that's a bit high. Now, Tesla has always traded at a premium, but even if you're going to look at Tesla not as an automotive maker, automotive makers are going to get anywhere between maybe 10 and 15 PE ratio. So if you're going to look at it from a tech standpoint, let's look at it from an Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia standpoint. Even those software makers that are out there, you're looking at somewhere around a 30 to 40 PE, and that's about average. So even if you're going to factor in Tesla like that at a 30 to 40, even if you want to put a premium on it and say that they're still earlier in their growth stage and say 60 to 70, that's still significantly lower than we're at right now. So that I think is one of the things that people, are kind of missing. And again, if Tesla comes through and surprises us with things, that's great. But a lot of times in the past, Tesla has surprised us with things and we haven't seen it come to fruition yet. Not to say we're not going to, but we still have to be shown those things. So, whether they can justify a 100 PE ratio at this point, I'm not sure. So maybe we push higher. The market can stay irrational for longer than most people can stay solvent, and so perhaps it continues to push up. Maybe we pass all-time highs before we pull back. But I still think we're going to pull back because don't forget, we were at all-time highs and then pulled back to 100. So that's basically 414 to 100. That's over a 75% drawdown. Not to say it can't happen again. So now, granted, like I said, the fundamentals have grown despite, a rough couple of years when it comes to Tesla with, interest rates being higher and basically year over year flat deliveries. So even with that, they have still fundamentally grown a lot of their technologies, things like that. They've come out with the Cyber Cab. They've released the Cyber Truck. It's now to volume production. They've gotten themselves the Model 3 hatchback coming out next year, which of course they're not going to talk about that at all because they don't want to have the Osborne effect on it. It's in the works. It's going to happen. And chances are, I've said it before, that Tesla's going to come out and, maybe it's going to be around the annual shareholder meeting in June. And they're going to say, hey, this is what's going to be released. We've got the Model 3 hatchback that's coming out. This is the price that it's going to be. And by the way, it's on sale now because they want to minimize the time between the announcement and the actual release of it. Because if the longer they have a gap there, the more sales they're going to lose. Because if they all of a sudden say, hey, we have a vehicle that's $5,000 cheaper than the Model 3, then people will be like, oh, well, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait and get that. And if they say it's 3 months out, people are like, well, I can wait 3 months. That's not a big deal. So Tesla's going to have to do it very quickly and can say, hey, we've got this out next week or next month, whatever it is. They're going to minimize the window of time that they're going to be losing any sales on the Model 3 and potentially Model Y when they're going to be releasing this hatchback version. So Tesla just needs to be careful about that. But I think it'll be coming whenever we get it. I'm guessing the annual shareholder meeting, maybe after Q2 earnings, and maybe they shock us. Maybe it's after Q1 earnings. I don't know. Maybe there's a February release and they say, hey, February, here it is. Bang, we're done and we're out. That could totally happen. But Model Y currently is still getting revamped itself over in Europe and other places. So with the Model Y getting revamped, just like the Model 3 did to get the Highland, they want to finish that up first, get that out there. They don't want to have that release come out and then all of a sudden come out with this hatchback and basically lose any, sales are going to get on the Model Y, and all that money that they spent on that, getting it upgraded, still needed to get upgraded. But, they want to put a bit of a gap between those two. That's all. Let's see what else we got going on here. Bitcoin, Palantir, SoFi, tariffs coming out, Santa Claus rally. I'm so torn. Again, I don't know what we're going to get. It's so hard to predict just because, looking historically going into an election like we had, we usually get a sell-off. We didn't really get a sell-off. We actually just got a little bit of a sideways trading and it just wasn't as excited of a market, but it was still moving up. And then it went crazy excited after the election. So we still got the post-election boom, but we never got the sell-off pre-election. So I don't know if that means that the Santa Claus rally is not going to happen because we never got the actual election sell-off. I just want to be ready. Again, I've got about 11% cash sitting on the sidelines waiting for opportunities, and I'm just going to see what's going to happen. As my dad says, a lot of talk about big money pulling back in January to see what Trump actually does. And that's it, because again, right now we have speculation as to what Trump is going to be doing. And so the market is trading accordingly based upon that. But what's going to end up happening is just as we get closer, people are going to be uncertain, be like, is he actually going to do this? Then, of course, January 20th, he said he's going to be enacting a whole lot of things right off the bat. So, all right, cool. So January 20th, people going up to that is like, well, what is he going to enact? How is this actually going to affect the market? There's going to be a lot more uncertainty as we get closer, which could cause that market to sell off. Because don't forget, the market does not like uncertainty. Every time we have massive uncertainty in the market, we get people selling off because they're like, well, I'm going to take some money off the table, especially with how much we've moved up in the market. They're like, I'll take some money off the table right now and I'll just put it aside and wait to see what's going to be going on. And then once I see what's going to be going on, I can then figure out how Trump's actions are going to affect the market. Then I can reinvest accordingly. So they're going to wait for that uncertainty to clear to get some certain data and at least direction. Then they'll reinvest. So that's very much what could be happening. It's just a matter of when is it going to happen. Could be like January. It was like a week before. I want to say, because I remember there was one year, a couple of years ago, where I thought we were going to get a sell off January 1st and it ended up coming on like January 14th. And now I wasn't as in tune with the market. So that could have been some jobs data points that were coming out at that point, knowing January 14th, could have been CPI data coming out at that point. So things like that could have been the reason why we sold off then. So this could be another thing where, hey, we're getting data points. Don't forget January 20th, that the week that Trump gets inaugurated, we are also going to be getting the reports for Q3 or for Q4 when it comes to the retail sales. And that's when earnings are going to start kicking off as well for Q4 is the end of the month of January. So we're going to start getting some data coming in from Q4 to see how we truly were. And if we see weaker than expected numbers, which sounds like right now the numbers aren't as strong, and I've mentioned it before, a lot of the retail numbers aren't as strong because people are buying gifts earlier throughout the year. They're buying it over the summer. There's companies, like Amazon, they don't do like a Cyber Monday thing. They did theirs in October. So there's a lot of companies who have been doing earlier seasonal specials and people are buying ahead of time. So Black Friday is kind of like it's lost its luster and it doesn't have the same punch that it used to have before because a lot of those sales are getting spread out over the course of the year. And so, as you start looking at numbers year over year, as that gets spread out more and more, the Q4 numbers aren't as exciting because they're spread out into other quarters. We also had what was going on in October when it came to the port strike. And while the port strike itself didn't last very long, a lot of retailers and other companies leading up to that did a lot of heavier buying to buy ahead of time because they didn't know how long the port strike was going to last. So a lot of those purchases were, pulled forward into Q3. So Q4 might not have those same numbers just because everything was pulled into Q3, hence why Q3 numbers were so good. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into Q4 about, well, was that truly the case that those sales were pulled forward into Q3, or was it really actually just a good quarter and we're going to see another good Q4? So it's so hard to tell. Yeah. Yeah. You buy all year round, not close to Christmas. I do the same thing, and I'm not usually one to buy gifts for people. But if I am and I see something that's on sale, it's like, oh, that's really cool. Or even if I'm doing it for myself, I'm going to buy it then. Now, I did get some things for Black Friday because they were on special. I got a printer that was, half off. Got it for $40 because I needed a printer. I haven't owned one. So now I've got one of those. I got some vacations for myself. It was wild. I just went on. I saw these deals for, it was like $99 for 4 nights. And I'm like, is this legit? Let me figure it all out. And I looked into it. I did a lot of research on it, and they are legit, but you have to sit through their, presentation for their timeshare stuff. I'm like, whatever. If I got to sacrifice 2 hours to save $700 on a trip, absolutely, it's totally worth my time. So I looked into that, and then of course, when you book it, you've got to call them up so they can give their, aggressive spiel on, trying to, sell you on all their other stuff and upsell you. And the deal ended up being pretty great because there was like $700 for another 27 nights of vacation and 3 different vacations. I'm like, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I had gift cards from my job and the guy knocked it down to $450. And I'm like, I got $450 in gift cards. Heck yeah. So I got myself a month worth of vacations to go on. I have to pay for the airfare and stuff. But I mean, for basically $600, I got about 31 nights worth of vacations in 4 different trips that I can use anytime. I have to use the first one in 3 years, and then anytime in my life for the rest of my life, I can use these other ones so they don't expire. So for me, I bought that, but that was really it. That was the extent of my Black Friday gifts. Usually for like my nephews, I'm going to go and I'll invest into their college funds and things like that because they've got plenty of toys. They don't need more. Even talking with my brother and sister, like, plenty of toys. If I can give them something that can help them out in the future, and if my 30-year-old nephews in the future can thank me at this point right now, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. So that's what I'm trying to do for them. And again, I don't need to wait for Black Friday deals for that. It's just going to be straight cash into an investment. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Black Friday deals in the stock market, that's where, bear markets, corrections, recessions, that's when you're going to be getting those Black Friday deals. And again, those can happen anytime. We don't know when they're coming. So I just want to be ready for when they happen, because imagine if you were actually a gift buyer and you had some awesome Black Friday deals, but you had no money to buy those Black Friday deals, and you had to wait 3 weeks until the Black Friday deals were over, and you had to buy them at higher prices when you actually got money. You'd be frustrated because you missed out on those great deals. That's why I save money on the sidelines and look at cash flow coming in when it comes to the stock market, because I don't want to miss out on those Black Friday deals. Now, granted, Black Friday, that date when it's going to happen, so you can save up money for it. You don't know when you're going to get those Black Friday deals and those fire sales in the stock market. So it's always good to have that stockpile of cash and free cash flow coming in to take advantage of it when they do happen. When you make it big, you won't have to deal with that anymore. That is true. And that is my goal. And I've run out my manifest list. And I don't know if you guys do it manifest lists or plan things out. For me, I'm a planner. I like to set a plan in place and say, hey, this is where I would like to be at a specific point, and what can I do? What actions do I need to take to get me there? And so I will set that up. And the further out I go, the more broad it is, because I don't want to really kind of pigeonhole myself into anything, but kind of have a broad general sense. And then, the more near time frames, like in the next year, I'm like, all right, I need to be more specific and direct with my actions here, and just kind of leave myself open to any opportunities. Because I don't know, there might be opportunities that aren't even on my radar that are out there that I want to take advantage of. So, and I just take those steps as I go forward, and I broaden out. And so I've done my manifest list through 2030. If all things go to plan as they are right now and nothing changes, then I will be able to hit millionaire status by 2030, should be able to get my castle or villa in Italy by 2030. And then, to my dad's point, when I make it big, at that point, I won't have to deal with it anymore, because then gifts I can give to people will be like, hey, here's some airfare, come out and visit my villa in Italy. And that would be my goal at that point when I've made it big. So we will see if that actually happens, but that would be my goal as of right now, if I can play out these manifests as I put them forward. And so far, it has been coming to fruition, because this year I actually had said I wanted to hit $55,000 in my stock portfolio. I'm over 60,000. I wanted to hit $200,000 in net worth. I'm at about $220,000 right now. I wanted to have the house and have it rented out. I've gotten that all taken care of. I wanted to have the kitchen done. I'm still working on that. So it might still get done by the end of the year. If not, it'll happen right after the first of the year. That will increase the value of the house as well. So a lot of the things that I have had on my manifest list, I have made come to fruition because I have taken the actions I have needed to get there. So, I'm just working on the same thing for next year. It's pushing myself to the next level. So of course it's going to be a lot of work. Obviously the planning is just one piece of it, but having that plan, adapting and working your butt off to that plan is what will help you get there. And so far it's been working for me, and I plan on just continuing to do that in the future. Oh man, it's almost been an hour. Well, I'm going to let you guys go now. I do have to get to bed, and it's just getting tired. But I love this today. I missed you guys last week, so I'm glad I was able to spend all this time with you guys. And yes, a lot of satisfaction in accomplishing your goals. And that's it. And I don't want anybody to ever get discouraged, because that's something that hit me a lot too, was not hitting my goals would discourage me. So I set little baby steps along the way, and progress is what excites me now. So even if I don't get to my goal now, that's fine, because I'm still making progress toward that goal. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. And I don't want to move the goalposts. If I have to, I have to, but I'm moving forward. I'm making that progress. And if I can figure out how to speed it up, I can. And I don't want to get discouraged if things are going slower, because very much like the stock market, there's times where I can make progress very quickly, and then all of a sudden I may dip back down and progress slows a little bit. And those are the times that I've learned to not give up. It is when times are tough and you're not making progress, where just go through it's okay to just go through the motions. keep on going through the motions. Those habits are important to continue to go through, because even if you're basically trading sideways with your goals and you're just moving sideways, that's still better than stopping entirely and having yourself pull back altogether. Then you have to, kind of re-get that motivation together. When you're just going through the motions, eventually things will snap back into place and you're like, all right, cool. Now you start making that progress again. So if I can leave you guys with some advice, it's just that is, if you feel like you're not making any progress, take that assessment and just say, let me just keep going through the motions. I'm going to keep going through the motions, and just keep your open mind of, is there something that I need to change, or do I just need to keep going through the motions? Just wait it out. That's it. And my dad's advice before we go, I look at life like a jigsaw puzzle. The more pieces you get in, the clearer the picture looks. Love that. I absolutely love that. And that's kind of where I'm at. And the more pieces that I have put into place, the more I'm like, oh, wow, this is where I want to go. And again, initially I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do in the future. I didn't know what my manifest list looked like. But as I got one more piece put in, I was like, oh, I like where this is going. I like where this is headed. Let me see what's next. And then I got another piece put in. So I like that, Dad. It's the very same mentality. I like how you put that. And that's a great place to end right there. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Love hanging out with all of you. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a great one.